I've never seen a diamond in the flesh. I cut my teeth on wedding rings.
Dude, that's pretty cool.
Man, that is a sad clown.
Dude, that's pretty good.
This is The Gloom, bringing you weekly interviews with F3 Omaha packs, exploring their F3 experiences and finding those sticky elements that create the glue in the gloom.
So on this episode of The Gloom, I've got just a guy that I've noticed as a high-impact man since I met him, but he helped to lead our Shawshank CSAUP, helped to plant, grow, and serve at the Trident AO, so was the founder of that site. Just recently passed the shovel flag, and was cool to see that event. But we got our man Roadhouse on The Gloom today. So Roadhouse, I'm super excited to see and excited for this conversation. Wonder if you would just start us off with that first workout, who EH'd you, what was that first workout like, and where'd you get the name? Where's the name come from?
Yeah, well, Plague, I appreciate you having me. Longtime listener, first time caller, excited to be on. So let's see, October of 2019, I got a new coworker at home instead by the name of Chadwick Bruff. You guys may know him as Wait Time. And, he started kind of just whispering in my ear about this thing that he does. Mentioned it was, early in the morning. Mentioned it was outside. And both of those didn't seem great options for me. And then it was January of 2020, and I found myself in the worst shape of my life. Like weighed more than I ever had a 2-year-old son that I was trying to, just try to hopefully get in better shape for. And so January 25th, he got me out there. So January 1st workout, which was, I think it was 7 degrees. And here's how he got me. He said, listen, I know 5:30 is early. How about Saturday at the Oracle, 7 a.m.? And I live right by Boys Town. So he's like, it's close and it's at 7. So just come on out. And so I showed up. I was nervous. I didn't know what kind of group it was going to be. Candidly, I thought it might be a bunch of meatheads trying to figure out who can do more push-ups. And then first guy I met was room service with this gorgeous mustache. And I was like, oh, man, this guy's awesome. Then I saw a couple of guys that I actually knew from pre-F3. And for the next hour, Wait Time ran us around Boys Town. We did about 600 monkey humpers. I was done. I was shot. But I came back, and it's been an awesome journey. Been a life changer for me.
And the name Roadhouse, I have wondered this myself. How did we get to Roadhouse? How did we end up there?
Yeah, so Wait Time gave me the advice, don't try to name yourself, right? So I just went in and, at the time, the biggest thing in my life was my son, Bodie. And I named my son Bodie after Patrick Swayze's character from Point Break. And apparently you guys already had a Point Break. I haven't seen him in The Gloom in 3 years, but there was a Point Break. So Chicklets took one look at me and said Roadhouse, and I loved it, and I've loved it ever since. I've got my fair share of Patrick Swayze memes and gifs over the last couple of years that have really filled my bucket. So
that's awesome. And so that one of the things I was going to try to ask you about was you've always been drawn to kind of the sexier workouts, right? There's been some element of so is it the monkey humpers that's your first workout that kind of drew you to that, or is it Patrick Swayze, or what's been the inspiration behind some of what I think we'd call F3 Omaha's sexiest beatdowns, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that I deliver without the sexiest beatdowns out there. I just think for a lot of us who show up in The Gloom, sometimes we come for the fitness part, the fellowship, the faith. But I think a big part that we don't always talk about is like just this kind of getting back to kind of who we are and kind of that swag that we once had and maybe lost a little bit. And I think, whether you're doing some oh yeahs or some pickle pushers and you're just looking into another man's eyes, dry humping the earth, I feel like it gets you back to who you were. And so I always said at my workouts, my beat downs will constantly move and we'll laugh a lot. And if those two things happen, then I think it's a good morning.
Yeah, I love that. So you mentioned kind of maybe a preconceived idea, like you'd be coming into a group of maybe a bunch of meatheads or guys that are like all about the fitness piece, and it sounds like that was not the case. What was your experience as you engaged with guys at that first workout?
Yeah, obviously I knew Wait Time, ran into a couple people. I knew Vandalay previously. I knew Placebo back in college. And so, seeing a couple guys that I knew, but just, the encouragement, the excitement around a new guy, like, I hadn't felt that since high school sports, right? Or since intramural sport. Like, I mean, and I know Wait Time had said that to me. It's a bunch of guys who miss playing sports and like having that team environment. And, when people are genuinely excited, you're there and seem to enjoy your presence and welcome you like that. We don't get a lot of opportunities to do that as men in our 30s and 40s, I don't think. And so I felt welcomed right away. And then just the relationships that you build. You mentioned before we started recording, be as vulnerable as you want. I think the vulnerability of the packs is what drew me in. I think it was a COT by Slow Pitch early on, where he was just talking about like all his challenges and where he needs to get better, and as a husband and a dad and a friend. And I was like, wow, this guy's really burying his soul. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, you just don't get this anywhere else. And so I was, after a few beat downs, but more importantly, probably the COTs, I was in, just because it was guys trying to get better. And that's what I was trying to do.
Now, I have to ask, because I think Wait Time confirmed this was true, but you mentioned in the shovel pass that you asked him, maybe it was after your first cue, like, is there an opportunity to just do COTs? So tell me about that, the COTs.
Yeah.
Always got you.
So, for my job, I speak a lot. I do a lot of teaching and training and public speaking, and do some MC stuff on the side. And so, the COTs drew me right away, and I was like, man, I would love to deliver, some cool messages in the morning, and, maybe inspire people, get people fired up. But I had zero history of exercising. Like I never, I donated a monthly fee to the gym for 12 years, but that was more of a charitable donation because I never attended. So I asked him, I said, hey, any way I can just do COTs and not lead the workout? And he shook his head. There's no chance. Like, you have to lead a workout. And so pretty quick, so I joined January 25th was my first day. Early March was my first cue at Paradise. And that's a whole nother story that we can get into, because that was the day that the earth stopped. And it was our last post for, what was it, 50 days, I think, with the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, so before, I do want to hear about that first cue, because I think that'll be a good story. But how did you get over because initially, right, the 5:30 in the morning was kind of too early. So what drew you in, or how how'd you bridge the gap to your second post? What was that journey like for you? Was that kind of a mental battle, or how'd you get to that second post, second and third, and so on?
Yeah. So candidly, I've always been a morning person. I like mornings. I'm usually at my best in the mornings. And with my schedule, it's probably the only way that it works out. I had someone close to me when I told them that I was thinking about doing this. They said, well, if you ever get up, good luck. And that was in my head for a while. That was motivation for me. Like, this person didn't think I'd get up and go. But the big thing for me was the accountability. Like, once you get to know these guys, like, when I tell someone via text on a Tuesday night that I'll be at Paradise on Wednesday, like, those times where you fart sack or oversleep, it's the worst feeling. Like, it's guilt, and I was raised Catholic, so I'm familiar with guilt. But it's just like, oh, I'm so sorry I left you out there. And they're like, it's okay, there were 20 other guys. But I was like, I know, but I told you I'd be there. It's that accountability is huge. I used to think failure was my biggest fear, but I've done it so often that I don't think I can be that afraid of it. I think disappointing someone is probably it for me. And to disappoint someone and to not show up when you told them you would, to me, that's enough to get me out of bed at 4:30.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you. I think, it does something different when you're like, well, I'm almost like I'm letting other people down, right? Or there's this like feeling of like, and I do love the response that that you mentioned is like most of the time the guy's like, well, I missed you, but it was okay, right? I wasn't alone. Tell me a little bit. So your fitness journey, it sounds like really took off, right? Because you said from a fitness perspective, you were not really in good shape, but then started working out. And did you find the workouts challenging or difficult, or how was that for you?
Yeah, so I've never really had a consistent exercise program. I'd work out for 2 weeks and then not again for 3 years. I mostly stayed active by playing, basketball leagues and volleyball leagues and things of that nature. But yeah, that January, geez, I was 220 pounds. I graduated high school at 140. So I was 80 pounds heavier than I was when I was a senior in high school. And one of the motivations was, I don't have a great family history. My two grandfathers died in their 40s. And, having Bodie at 40, like that's just not an option to not be around that long. So that was really motivation for me to get in better shape, to get healthier. And I had to take a hard reflection at how I was going to become someone who gets up at 4:30 in the morning and goes and works out. One was I had to stop drinking every night. That was a big one. I had to eat better. I had to sleep better. I still do those things in moderation. I can still get after it if I need to, but like I'm just healthier and in a better spot. And that's great having a 4-year-old son who constantly wants to go, that's the motivation. My dad was always the fit, strong, cool dad with the awesome mustache, similar to yours. And, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror pre-F3 and I was like, God, if Bodie saw me right now with his buddies, he'd be like, oh yeah, my dad's that soft, chubby, fat dude over there with the beer in his hand. And I was like, man, that's not what the way that I looked at my dad when I was a kid. If Bodie sees 1/10 of that when he looks at me, that would be the dream, right? And so I just wanted to be better for him.
I love that. I love to, and I think you've done a really good job of sharing some of your journey with your son as a father. I know I've seen a few tweets every now and then of like kind of adventures with Bodie type of thing. And I think it's just really cool, especially to realize like that's one of our main reasons for being here, right? For if we have children, right, we've got to be here for our children, our wives, and you think about like the concentrica when it comes to F3 Q source stuff. And I find myself forgetting, right? Like work is easy to like do a task and feel important, but it's those moments that you can't really measure with your kids and your loved ones that are so cool. So I love that you called that out. What about, as you started, we get to like, okay, now you're engaged, right? You're going multiple times a week. And then you have your first Q. Was there convincing that needed to happen before you were ready to lead, or you were kind of like, this is awesome, I want to be a part of it, or how'd that go?
Well, so wait time wanted to co-Q. And I was like, okay, well, that's a nice kind of toe in the swimming pool, right? Like he'll be there to lean on. And so he said, hey, you design the workout, just let me know what you need. And so I probably sent him 80 texts that night before, like, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? What do you think of this? And what's funny, and this typically is how it goes when I Q, I knew what the COT was. I knew what my COT was. I had no idea what the workout was going to be. And I don't know if you felt this way, but the first time you Q, you don't want to be a jerk and make it impossible, but you also don't want to be like, geez, that wasn't a workout at all. Like I was really trying to balance this line between, not burying the guys, but also giving them a good workout. And being someone who didn't exercise much my entire life, I was like, I don't even know what to do. So I was nervous. I don't think I slept at all. And then I get there, it was at Paradise, and I get there and wait time pulls me aside and says, hey, we're shutting down after this because of COVID. So this is the last workout in a while. And I took a minute to look around the circle, and Tater Tot's got tears in his eyes. Slow Pitch is crying. Sparty was like, and I was like, this is my first workout and this is the last workout ever. Like, I didn't know, who knew what was going to happen. And so I remember wait time said, maybe because of everything going on, we should split up into 2 groups. And I think there were only like 13 guys there. And I remember Tater Tot said, with all due respect, we're going to do this one together. And it was pouring rain. So it was raining. It was paradise. It was the last workout before the shutdown. And we just went. And we were, at one point, we were laying in the middle of Regency Parkway in a puddle doing Turkish get-ups. And Bubbles was like, what are we doing? Like, there's traffic coming. I'm like, just keep going. We're good. And then we got done. And the COT that I wanted to deliver went well. But it was also kind of that emotional. Like, you could tell people were emotional about what was going on. So I'll never forget. I mean, it was a morning. And then we went inside to Paradise and sat there for an hour and a half. And guys were crying. The coffee guy came out and he was tearing up. Like, when the coffee barista starts tearing up, it's an emotional morning. And it was just crazy. And then I started doing some of the small workouts, kind of the off the record workouts. And I think that's what really solidified me, in this group. Cause I was so bummed that we were shut down because I just started getting some momentum around it, And I was like, well, what are we going to do? And I remember wait time said something along the lines of, we're shutting down, but on Monday I'll be at the Murph. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll be at the Murph too. So then we have a group of guys at the Murph. So, man, it was a crazy morning, a ton of fun. I did an anniversary one of that one at the Berm last year, did the same workout. And it was just one of those mornings I don't think I'll ever forget.
I love that. It's so fascinating to think back on just what was going on in the world, how it impacted, and curious when you think back to kind of that time, because so fitness wise you're cruising along, and then like fellowship starting to kick off, and then it's like we shut down. But what's been your experience with fellowship? I mean, did the pandemic and some of the kind of smaller groups actually build stronger relationships for you, or how did that work out?
Yeah, I think it did. Kind of our little core group that would work out, wait time, Tater Tot, Slow Pitch, big one, Sparty. Like, we just, we'd start texting, right? Like, it was funny knowing I was coming on this. I think I got about 30 F3 texts this morning from different guys. And I was like, wow, like that's 30 guys that I didn't even know a couple years ago, So, one part of my group of buddies that I've always had, like, our thing was kind of, partying and going out, drinking, having fun. And we had a ton of fun, but there are times where it's like, there's got to be more to this. And, to the fellowship of a bunch of guys wanting to get better, whether it's work or being a dad or being a husband or getting in better shape, like that's a tribe I'd like to be a part of, and again, back to the vulnerability, that really drew me in, like, because you just don't see that. I grew up in a household with 2 older brothers and a dad, so leaders were tough and strong, and we watched Sylvester Stallone movies and Bruce Willis movies, and they did it by themselves and they didn't need any help. So that's what my picture of leadership was growing up. But as I've gotten older and learned a couple things, to me, being vulnerable is the greatest thing you can do as a leader. To admit that you don't know, to say that you were wrong, to admit that you have, deficiencies, and to be willing to ask for help. And so once I saw that was the kind of group it was, and it wasn't a competitive, and it wasn't, bravado and machismo, and that really attracted me to this group.
I love that, and I'm right there with you. I think it's kind of like as we're maturing, and I'm not sure if you've read Free to Lead or not. I hope you have, but I think they talk about it in there, and I think you as you're reading that book, you're reading your own story almost, and you kind of see it happening, right? That if we don't find something different to relate to, other than kind of the, going out or, partying scene. I mean, and I'm not, I'm sober, but I'm not against people that still drink, but I think there's got to be some other element to our relationships. I certainly have a lot of friends that was the only thing we had in common. And I think if you're in that sort of space, then that could be kind of dangerous. But I want to ask, because you have a unique, kind of relationship, because wait time, right? Was he your boss when he came into, or he was kind of like in a parallel department, or?
Yeah, so he wasn't my boss. He was, if we looked at the org chart, he was much higher up than me, but just different departments. I've been at Home Instead longer. I've been there 13 years. It'll be 3 for him in October. But he came in at a high level, so we knew each other a little bit. And actually, what got me was the new employees come through a week-long training that I do. And so we were together all day, every day for 5 days, and he kept just, hey, what are you doing tomorrow morning? What are you doing tomorrow morning? And so, he says, and I don't know if I believe this, but there was a happy hour during his interview process, and I stopped by because I'm pretty close with the team that he joined, and he was like, the second I saw you, I knew you were F3 guy, and I was like, no, you didn't. Like, there's no way. And he who knows how many guys he said that to, Plague. I mean, that's probably his pickup line at the bar when it comes to F3 guys. But, him and I just kind of clicked right away and have become really great friends. And, I said this when I passed the flag the other day, he saw something in me that I don't know if I had seen, right? I didn't know if I had that ability to do some of the things that he thought I could do. And it's been impactful for me. I'll never forget. Outside of F3. So I won an award at work last year, and he comes down to my office. He was more excited than I was. And I haven't had a lot of relationships like that where someone was like more excited for me getting something than they were if they would have gotten it, or more excited than I actually was. And that was a moment where I was like, wow, this guy seems to really care about me, and he's been a great friend and a mentor to me. So
yeah. How do you think, because there was a time in my life where Tonight Show was my kind of the boss I was directly reporting to, and now he's like 2 layers above me. But in my experience, it was like almost, it made work like so much better, because I was like, see you in the morning, we're working out, and like, and kind of applying F3, jargon or concepts to our, leadership at work. And so our relationship really, really grew. And of course, now there's somebody in the middle, so I don't know if that's the same, but was that the same experience for you? I feel like it's like enables us to do things at work that we maybe wouldn't do otherwise.
Yeah, I think probably once a day, I'll just swing by his office and just, hey, how was your workout this morning? Where'd you go? Because we don't, I don't know if this is how most guys are, but since he EH'd me, like my first 20 workouts, I was like, all right, where are you going? I'm going where you're going, right? Yeah. But then you get comfortable going with other guys and going to other places. So now it's like checking in on, how the workout was. And then we actually had Sweet Roll just start at our company. So, he walks by my office. I'm like, Sweet Roll. And, everyone's like, what'd you just call him? I'm like, oh, sorry. We call him Sweet Roll. Is that cool? And so, it's fun seeing those guys. We've EH'd a couple guys from the office. Not all of them have stuck, but, they'll say, hey, how's that workout thing going? You still doing that thing? And, it's what's crazy is since I started F3, I'm down about 35 pounds. And that was during the pandemic where we were all working remotely. So now everyone starts coming back to the office. They're like, geez, what happened to you? I'm like, oh yeah, I work out in the mornings now. So that's something I do. So that's always, you forget about that.
Yeah, I love that. The other thing I think that's so cool is just hearing that leadership journey, and because it sounds like just somebody else having like a belief in you, right, was such a valuable thing, and maybe propelled you in the workspace or even in family life. But curious, so talk to me a little bit about, as you engage with F3, we kind of get out of the pandemic, and then now you're ready to launch a new site. I mean, what was your experience there with, kind of picking the site, the launch, and then, I think you mentioned in the shovel pass, but just how do you feel like that kind of helped you gain confidence or grow as a leader?
Yeah, well, I found myself in Wait Time's basement with him and Tater Tot. And, you know, they were like, hey, let's talk about the future of F3. I'm like, okay, like, what do you need me to like bartend? Or like, why am I there? Why am I invited to this get together? And, you know, they talked about, hey, we're thinking about to open some sites. Would, you know, what kind of role would you want? And I was like, wow, like, you know, I never saw myself as, you know, someone who'd be a leader in the group. And, you know, even in my career, I've always considered myself more of a doer, right? Like, let me just do stuff and then, you know, kind of lead by example. So then, you know, the location of the Trident came up, the Tri-Faith area, you know, big one. And a couple other guys had kind of started doing some little workouts around that area. And it's 45 seconds from my house. So that's great. And then one thing I loved was just the whole concept of the Tri-Faith campus, you know, to have those 3 churches there. And the more I did research on it, it's the only Tri-Faith campus in the world. Yeah. And I was like, and I kept going back to open to all men, right? And if, you know, candidly, if you look around our group, most of us look pretty similar, but we are open to all men, right? I mean, we're open to, you know, whether it's religion, whether it's race, whether it's, you know, sexuality, whatever it is, you're there. And so I thought it just represented really well one of our core principles of who we are, being open to anyone who wants to work on getting better. And so we, you know, next thing you know, I remember Tater Tot was like, so you want to open on April 20th? And it was like March 28th. I'm like, what? Okay. And so we did a couple pop-ups, terrified that no one would show up. I think we got like 25 guys at each pop-up. And then we launched April 20th last year. 47 guys show up. Another morning I won't forget, just a blast. The workout was probably the worst one I've ever led. Like, it was just, I was all over the place. I don't think anyone broke a sweat, but it was just a lot of fun. And then, you know, I remember asking Hard Hat, you know, to be a site Q, like, you know, how much commitment is it? How much work is it? He's like, fill the queue schedule. That's really, I mean, that's the major thing you have to do. Now, you know, how much you're engaged on Twitter and how much you do some other things. And I obviously had a lot of fun with Twitter and this last year from the Trident. But, you know, it's like, okay, it just seems like I got to get a bunch of guys to lead. And I didn't ask anyone to lead for about 6 months. Like, guys were just like, hey, can I lead the Trident? Sure. Awesome. And so it was natural. It was fun. I loved, you know, kind of being in a different role a little bit, but just asking guys to come out and seeing guys lead and asking them to get weird a little bit, because that's what we do at the Trident. And people embraced it and had fun with it. And I remember I was in Denver, Colorado last July, and Slick happened to be there at the same time. So we met up for a beer at some rooftop bar. And this was just 3 months after I opened. I said, hey, eventually I'm going to have to pass this thing. Like, I'd love it to be you. And he's like, oh, okay, well, let's think about this. And, you know, he pondered it for a while and eventually said, let's do it. And I can't think of a better guy to pass it to. It was, you know, me and Huffy and Toadstool and Gobbler all started our sites the same week, and we all passed this same week as well. So we've kind of been texting about, you know, it's emotional, especially for 4 sites that we started, you know, like to hand that over, to pass over that flag. It was, even after that workout, not putting the flag in my car was such a weird feeling. You know, there's a sense of pride and accomplishment. There's also a sense of relief, a little bit of sadness, a little bit of, well, what do I do now? Right. And I've talked to other site Qs who kind of have that what now after they pass the flag. And, you know, you look for other opportunities to lead, and, you know, you get taken off the Slack channel and, you know, whatever the case may be. So I'm excited to see what's next. And even if it's just showing up and just re-engaging as a member of the pack, it sounds like a good ride.
Yeah, I have to say the identity that you created for your site, for the Trident, giving guys a space to be weird, a space to like, let's get back to some of that inner, like, childish, you know, like, stuff that it's totally okay. And a lot of feelings or emotions or things that we don't normally express, right? Because we think it's not it's not okay, and it totally is. And I love that. I also remember, and I didn't get to be there, but there was a workout you led in, I think it was Danger Zone or somewhere in Sarpy, and you must have worn jean shorts to cue the workout. And I just remember hearing about that for weeks on end about just that it was a phenomenal workout, and of course your COT was great there too. But what do you think inspires you to like share that message of, kind of be who you are with the packs? Where do you feel like that comes from?
I'm just drawn to having fun. Like, if we're not having fun, what are we doing? And I remember, I think, early on, some of the first beatdowns I went to, I was like, right, it's kind of serious, right? Like, there's some mumble chatter, but I think it was a cue. I think Othello led a workout, and Othello, he's going to get weird with you and have fun. And I was like, man, okay, like this, it actually gave me permission to, okay, let's get a little weird with this.
Yeah.
And whether it's wearing, and it wasn't jean shorts, it was full on jeans at the Danger Zone. Still a little chafed on my inner thighs from that workout. But that was one of the best mornings, because I didn't know any of the Sarpy guys. And then I show up in jeans and they're looking at me like I'm an idiot, but they embraced it. And they actually had started a streak of guys wearing jeans for a few weeks in a row. And then, someone, dropped the ball there. But, especially the last couple of years of the pandemic, like, if you can't get passionate and have fun about something, like what are we here for? It's been a tough couple of years personally, professionally. And, one of the lessons I take out of this is, like, find what brings you joy and happiness and do more of it. F3 has become one of those things for me, but also making people laugh and making people have fun and getting people out of their comfort zones. That was my COT at the flag pass the other day, is get out of your comfort zone, try new stuff. Whether it's a new site that you've never been to, whether it's queuing, whether it's stepping into a leadership role, like, there's nothing but greatness on the other side of trying something new, even if it doesn't go well. And so, like, let's just own kind of our weirdness a little bit and just have fun and laugh. And, if people aren't laughing at one of my cues, then I feel like I didn't do a good job.
Yeah. No, I love that. And that's the beauty of having all these different guys lead workouts, right? Is we're all different. I often joke, like, it's hard for me to have fun, because I spent a lot of time having too much fun. And so finding the balance is hard. So I need guys like you to, like, remind me, like, hey, like life should be fun. And if you're taking yourself too seriously, you're doing it wrong. And, Ponzi always gives me a hard time, right? I have tried to create a fun workout every once in a while, and it's tough for me, but it's good to have good neighbors.
Well, it's difficult to have fun during a workout when you're doing 150 burpees. So it's about balancing out, right? Like, you got to figure out that balance, Plague. Like, you can't, if we're doing burpees the whole time, no one's having fun. So
right. Yeah.
You take someone to Burpee Island, there's not going to be a lot of laughter there.
Yeah, I have to remember that. I'm trying. I think I've gotten better my last couple. I did like some dolphin thing at the Trident when I led, right? That wasn't too bad.
Yeah, that was.
I want to talk to you a little bit. So a couple of questions. I do want to hear kind of your thoughts about what's next. Where do you want to lead? Where do you see kind of your next leadership journey? And then I would also love to hear, you mentioned a couple things. Mentioned being raised Catholic and kind of some experience with guilt. But you also, I think this is the second time I feel like you've intentionally taken time to go away, be alone, and reflect. And there's a lot of spiritual growth there. So I don't know which way you want to go first with that, but just would love to get your thoughts kind of on that faith piece, and then also where do you see yourself going next, or where do you want to lead next?
Yeah, so I'll start with the vision quests that I find myself on. I'll be honest, when Wait Time told me what the 3F stood for, the faith one was initially a turn off for me. Like, what do you guys say, the rosary during the workouts? Like, I was like, come on. And someone who was raised Catholic, and if you're raised Catholic, it's kind of forced upon you in a lot of ways. And I always dug the stories from religion, but there was a lot of stuff that I didn't love about it. And so, faith-wise, I like believing in something bigger than myself. I don't think I know what it is. I think just I like believing in people, believing in people's potential to get better and learn and grow and be a better version of themselves tomorrow than they are today. But you know, I've had some bumps in the road. So last year I took a little trip to Moab, and it was right after my wife filed for divorce. And so I just had to get away. I had to get out of there. I traveled a lot for work pre-COVID, and for a year and a half, I was kind of locked down. So I just drove to Moab and camped in the desert for 5 days, and did a lot of reading and writing and reflecting. And, you know, I'd never done anything like that. And it was just great to unplug. I had no cell service. Oh, it was just beautiful. And I told myself after that, I'm going to do it every year. You know, maybe not there, maybe somewhere else, but just get away by myself. And, you know, I think reflection is something that we don't do enough of because we're too busy. But I think it's the only way we get better, right? So reflecting on maybe a failed relationship, maybe reflecting on things that aren't going great at work, and really trying to find your purpose again, whether it's professionally or personally. I love to write. You know, maybe you guys see that in my back blast. I like to make it a narrative. I like to make it a story as opposed to just a list of the exercises we did. And like I enjoy it, and just getting kind of how you're feeling down on paper, and embracing the emotions that you have, becoming aware of them, and then figuring out where you need to get better. It's hard for me to do that in the course of everyday life, between having a 4-year-old son and a job that pulls me in a lot of different directions. And so I think you have to unplug and get away. And, you know, when it comes to faith and spirituality, I'll tell you what, when you wake up at 2:00 in the morning in the middle of Moab desert and you look up at the stars, I don't think there's a more spiritual moment than that, in terms of like, wow, like I'm tiny. I'm a tiny part of this thing, but also to understand the impact that you can make as a tiny part of this thing. Right? Whether it's making someone feel a certain way or welcoming them to the group, or so many different opportunities we have to make an impact on the world. One of my favorite quotes is Steve Jobs. He said, "We're here to put a dent in the universe. Why else would we be here?" Like, that's what I think about every day, is like, how can I put a dent in the universe? And that universe could be one person's life. And so I think just to unplug from, you know, work, from family, from your phone, from so many things, and just to really reflect on how you're doing, but in a healthy way, not like after a couple of failed relationships, you could kind of beat yourself up a little bit, but to be like, okay, what am I doing well, right? What am I not doing well? And then how can I be better? And if you reflect that way every day, all you do is learn and grow. And to me, it also helps with confidence a lot, right? Because when you learn, you feel stronger, better, empowered. So if you learn every day, you start walking up that kind of self-esteem ladder a little bit, and you start feeling a little bit differently about yourself.
Man, that's phenomenal. I love that. And I think just being intentional and giving yourself space to think and evaluate your experiences. I think it's I think it's maybe John Maxwell or somebody that says reflection turns experience into insight, and so like this idea that we don't ever create space, and so that we never learn, from what we just experienced. I love that you're taking time to do that. You should. I feel like that's how McConaughey wrote Green Lights. He went on I'm hoping for a Roadhouse book one of these days.
So what's funny is my 13-hour drive to Moab, I listened to Green Lights, and I was just, oh man, it was awesome. So yeah, he I don't. One thing I always think about is, whether it's writing or speaking or whatever the case may be, it's like, how do you become someone where someone wants to hear what you're saying? Like, how do you go from, Matt Minnelli to Matt Minnelli, someone pays to come speak somewhere, right? Or someone reads what they write because they wrote it. And I think it's just putting stuff out there and seeing if it lands with anyone, right? And, whether it's COTs or, I write a bunch of blogs for my job, for our network. And typically I write stuff that I need to hear. And if it lands with someone, then it lands with someone, right? Like when I do COTs, it's a message that I need to hear. And then, so when someone says, oh man, perfect timing, like I need to hear that, like that's just the cherry on top that it impacted someone. But yeah, maybe there's a green lights in my future. We'll see.
I would, yeah. Hey, I'd buy that book, man. Curious, I wanted to get your thoughts on kind of F3 literature, free delete, Q source, some of that stuff. How has that impacted or has it just throughout your kind of F3 journey?
Yeah, I read Free to Lead right away. Chad, Wait Time gave it to me. And so I read that. And then once Slow Pitch's kind of essay his COT made it in there, I reread it again because that was such a cool thing for, I think, F3 Omaha. And, to me, Slow Pitch embodies everything we should be. And so just to see him get some attention on that was awesome. For me, you can always pull something there. I don't agree with everything that I read in there. One thing that I had heartburn with, so I'm a huge Jack Reacher fan. And I've read all of his books and they're like, don't be a reacher. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I've been wanting to be a reacher for 20 years now. Like, I was like, man, this is totally throwing me off. But, the Dolphin and the Daffodil really landed with me. Because I think, I always referred to it as Dharma before I heard Dolphin and Daffodil. It's kind of what are you good at and how do you bring value to other people, right? And then what brings you joy? To me, those are the three that guide what you should be doing. And I think a ton of people just have no idea. Like in having conversations at Q Source and other things, people are like, I don't know what my Dolphin is, what my Daffodil is. And I feel like I got a pretty good handle on it. I need to polish it up and figure out like who the best audience is. But I think what I do professionally and kind of what I like to do outside of work kind of all lends itself to this thing that I feel like it's in my wheelhouse, right? It's what I'm best at. I'm reading a book right now called Stealing Fire. And it's about these, Silicon Valley guys, Navy SEALs, all these really impressive people. And what they're trying to figure out is, when you're in the zone, like how do you recreate that all the time? Right? So think about what you do best, that feeling you have when you're doing what you do better than anyone else. How do you make that a constant in your life and feel that way all the time? Because candidly, when I step off stage after speaking, it's a tough feeling, right? It's like an empty feeling sometimes. But how do you keep that feeling of kind of being in the zone at all times or kind of being your best self? So I really resonated with that concept of the Dolphin and the Daffodil. And, anything you read, you can take some stuff that you love, you can dismiss some stuff you're not super into. That's usually how I approach that stuff.
Yeah. I, curious if you have any advice for guys, because like you said, I think a lot of our packs, right, are like just that sad clown syndrome, bouncing through life, just trying to make other people happy. And then you kind of realize, well, wait a minute, there is a bigger purpose, right? There is probably something I'm supposed to be doing. And I think, where I found myself struggling is what am I actually good at? What do I do better than anybody else? Because I spent most of my life being arrogant, thinking I did everything better than everybody else. Come to find out that's not true. So curious your thoughts there. And then just any other advice for F&G, site Qs, just the packs, anything you'd like to share just from your experience?
Yeah, I think one thing that we as human beings commonly do is, we'll look at our strengths and our weaknesses, and our action item is to work on our weaknesses, right? Where are we deficient, or what do we need to get better at it? And listen, that's part of becoming great and becoming the best version of yourself. But where I found the most success and where I find the most happiness is when I focus on my strengths. I mean, you think about your weaknesses, it's stuff you're not good at and probably things you're not passionate about. If you spend all your time on those things, you're probably not very happy. But the things you're good at, you like doing, it makes you feel good, you're passionate about those. So, I heard a speaker at a conference once talk about, listen, we spend way too much time on our weaknesses. We need to work on those areas. But if you ignore your strengths, then they come down to a mediocre level. and then your weaknesses move up to a mediocre level, and then you're just treading water in a sea of mediocrity. Like you got to work on your strengths, and we do it with our kids too. Hey, Plague, your son's good at math, but not at art, so let's make him do art all the time. But he's good at math. Like let's focus on the stuff that we're good at. And so I always tell people, like, what do you love to do and what are you good at, and double down on it. Like lean into those things, because that's what brings you joy and happiness. You know, a strength isn't something you're good at. A strength is something that gives you strength, gives you energy, gives you fire. And so if we can lean into things that we like to do and are, you know, good at it, it's not about ignoring the things we don't like. That's part of life, right? We all have to do things we don't like, whether it's Excel sheets or logistics or whatever the case may be. But let's just double down on the things we like doing and the things that we're good at. I think we ignore our strengths a lot. And you know, even within the packs, you like to run a lot, right? You like to do burpees. I think you're the only one who likes it, but you know, keep doing it. So it's like, what do you like to do? But then, you know, to a great COT that I heard from Slow Pitch, also do those things you don't like, right? Whether that's, you know, donkey kicks or Merkins or Mosian. It's a balance of the two, right? But if we're just working on the things we're not good at, I think we're missing a huge opportunity to really sharpen the saw that's got a lot of momentum heading in that direction.
Absolutely. That's phenomenal. What do you think for future for you? What do you want to do within F3, or where do you see your future kind of leadership opportunity there?
Yeah, I'm a connector. I love connecting people. And so whether it's, you know, at the beatdowns, whether it's outside of it, like I'd love to get involved in some second F stuff and some third F stuff, like, you know, the first F, which you lead so well. Like I gotta stay consistent on that. There have been times where I've 2 workouts a week or 1 workout a week. The Trident was sometimes the only one I went to because I was the site Q. So I got to stay consistent on that, but just, you know, connecting with people in different ways. I think there's an opportunity there. You know, I think a big part of life is finding out what's important to people and make it important to you. And so we got such diverse PAX members who have different interests. So let's explore those and let's connect people who like those and do them well. And so I love to, you know, just continue connecting people. And, you know, I love what Sparty's doing with the foundation. I did some mentoring with the Boys and Girls Club that Sparty hooked me up with this last fall. That was just a huge bright light in my life. So any way that I can, you know, give back. F3 has done so much for me in a short period of time, both physically and emotionally and mentally. And so I'd love to just give back any way I could, whether it's, you know, helping people, you know, doing events, whatever it looks like. I don't see this going away in my life because it's become such an important part of it. And I've forged some friendships in 2 years that candidly are stronger than friendships I've had in 40 years. Yeah. I remember Vandalay one time during a COT said, I see my best friend twice a year. I see you guys every morning. Like that's a crazy thing to think about, right? And so these relationships that I've been blessed and lucky enough to kind of forge with a lot of these guys, I'm just super grateful for them. So I just want to keep engaging, keep having fun, and, you know, make sure that the PAX doesn't get too stiff. I mean, we got to keep laughing at ourselves and getting a little weird.
I love that too, and I think you're right. What I've been noticing, I think Doppler has kind of put together this D3 group that's really taken off, and it's really it's serving a need for a lot of guys. And I think there are other pockets of, you know, kind of, I don't know if you call it special interest or whatever, but just where we could easily connect several guys and you know, just get together to regularly talk about something that's on your heart or on your mind, or so there's definitely some opportunity there. I love that idea.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing to me how, you know, you hear something for someone and you remember that, and maybe a week or two later you check in and, hey, how'd that presentation go? Or, hey, how'd your wife's procedure go? Or, hey, how's your son feeling? Like little things like that make a huge impact. And so it's just, you know, being aware of that and really being present in the gloom and listening. You know, I've learned to I said this at one of my COTs. I think Big One is one of the best listeners I've ever met. He's just like there for you and listens and like asks questions. And you're like, wow, I feel genuinely cared for in this conversation. And that's not a feeling that I get all the time. Right. And so I've learned a lot from him in terms of, just being present for someone, not always having to speak and just be there, and so that can make a huge difference in someone's morning and then their day and then their week.
And you do a phenomenal job of that. I can think when we were getting ready to have our daughter back in November, you would ask me all the time, how's your wife doing? How are you doing? And just reaching out to follow up on those things. And I think that's important, right? It's one thing to say, hey, how's it going? And then it's a totally different thing to listen and follow up on what they told you, is going on in their life. I mean, that's how relationships are built, right? I mean, that's the gold right there. Tell me about just kind of a couple final thoughts from you on advice for F&Gs and maybe for site Qs. What sort of advice would you give there from your experience?
Yeah, so I think for F&Gs, it's I think it's that vulnerability side. Like, don't be afraid to talk about something you're struggling with, right? Don't be afraid to, because if you're struggling with it, I guarantee someone else is. And all of a sudden you got that relationship. Gator and I recently have talked about, we both can lose our temper with our kids sometimes, like, just get frustrated with them. And so now we talk about it and say like, hey, how you doing? Oh, still losing it, but aware of it a little bit, right? And so it's just interesting. You learn about each other, and when someone has a similar challenge, it kind of connects you a little bit. So I think that vulnerability is what I would say for that. For site Qs, like make it your own. Like just whether you're getting it from someone else or starting it fresh, but pour yourself into it and like give it a personality. That's my favorite locations I love to go to. I think of when Armbar opened Top Rope, that personality was swaggy and had a mustache and had just fun and weird. And I was like, man, this is awesome. Right. And so pour yourself into it and your personality and what's important to you. I even think about, Mother Goose, doing the rosary afterwards, that matters to him. Like that's a cool thing that they do at that site. Right. And so bring all of yourself to your site, and just see what happens. Cause it's, just finishing up a year at the Trident. I did some weird things there and people seem to have a ton of fun. So.
Well, and now it's the year of hair, right? I mean, Slick is.
I can't think of a better head of hair to take that flag and carry it forward. So
yeah, I can see all sorts of hairband themed workouts there.
Oh yeah.
Anything else on your mind, or just any other thoughts? Maybe something we didn't cover, or things you'd like to share as guys are listening into your story.
I'm just super grateful for this group. And I think we can take it for granted at times, right? You go to 4 or 5 workouts a week and maybe you're, I just get up and I go do these workouts. And so just take some time. We talked about reflection, just to reflect on, not only the unique, special quality of this group. A lot of us have gone down range and we're like, wow, what we have in Omaha is pretty special. And that starts at the top with Wait Time, and now Tater Todd, who lights up the gloom with that big toothy smile of his. But just not only to reflect on what we have, but on also what we bring. Right. Early on, someone said, you might think you needed F3, but F3 actually needed you just as much. And to really have that balance and understand that, yes, I get a lot out of it, but I also have the ability to bring a lot to it, is one of the coolest things about this group. And so I think you got to have both those. You got to be grateful for what you're getting, but also be confident in what you bring to the table, and knowing that, you're a once in a lifetime shooting star. There's no one in this world that is like you. And so you can't waste it. Like your combination of skills and personality and talents and everything that you are the only one in the universe that has that. And if you sit on the sidelines with that blend of talent and magic, it's just such a waste. So, jump in and get in the game when you can.
That's phenomenal. And I love that, because that's essentially, we all need to hear that, right? I mean, I think, we get to come to this group, be who we are, be loved for it, and then be supported in where we're going. And I've felt that since the moment I first started, and it sounds like you have too. And I hope any new guys coming in that we can be that for them. I think for some guys, this is like the first time, I think you kind of mentioned it's like the first time you've ever had somebody else believe in you or care about you in a genuine way and want to support your growth. And so I just love that, because we got to meet guys where they're at, which is phenomenal. Well, brother, I'm grateful for you and your leadership. And I mentioned to somebody this morning, I said, I think I get to talk to Roadhouse this afternoon, and they were excited to listen in. They said, well, I bet that's going to be really funny. And I said, well, I think in my experience, Roadhouse can be funny, but he's also a really genuine, guy with a big heart. And I just think throughout this conversation, you just continue to blow me away. So I love you, man. And I think we'll take it out in a Namerama, and then, I'm excited to hear from you how this Vision Quest goes. So you'll have to keep us posted, but I'll start us off. Brandon Flaherty, 36, The Plague.
Matthew Manelli, 43 today, Roadhouse.
Roadhouse. Happy birthday, brother. This is great.
Hey, thank you, man.